The topics and opinions expressed in the following show are solely those of the hosts and their guests and not those of W4CY Radio, its employees, or affiliates. We make no recommendations or endorsements for radio show programs, services, or products mentioned on air or on our web. No liability, explicit or implied, shall be extended to W4CY Radio or its employees or affiliates. Any questions or comments should be directed to those show hosts. Thank you for choosing W4CY Radio.
Welcome to the Ask the Expert show on W4CY Radio and Talk4 TV, where we bring you educational information from top local experts in the fields of legal, health, financial, and home improvement. Now sit back and listen to experts in family law, association law, hearing loss, business brokers, home care, along with many other topics. Now here are your hosts, Steve-O and Sophia.
Hey, good morning, Missouri and Tennessee. Welcome to another Ask the Expert show. We have got such a great, actually two shows this morning. Our first show is becoming one of our top shows throughout the country. We are getting your emails, and I got to tell you, a couple of them said, I don't know if you ever read these emails. And we do, and we've decided to dedicate today's show to questions that you've sent in to our expert attorney, Lance Drury. Folks, this is one of the finest law firms when it comes to tax resolution. I am so excited because we've added more shows now. A lot of them from your request. So let's welcome our expert, the man from the law firm of Lance Drury. Lance Drury himself. Good morning.
Good morning, Steve. It's always great to see you. Glad to be here.
People love you. They love the way, Lance, you explain things to them. And, that's why your firm is so successful, because it starts from the top down.
Yeah, we've had a lot of great success. We've got a lot of great practitioners. I have better lawyers now than I've ever had. The firm has more than 1,000 clients at any one time. We're just going great guns, and we keep getting bigger and bigger all the time. The last few weeks have exploded, and I've been to San Antonio this month. I just got back from Nashville last week, and Wednesday, Steve, you don't know this, I'm going to New Jersey for a two-day seminar on artificial intelligence for law firms, because I might be an old dog, but I got to learn new tricks if I want to keep up with these youngins.
Oh my. So AI is going to have a big presence in your firm.
That's correct. We're going to learn it on a lot of different fronts. And it's not just on AI, but that's the bulk of it. But, you got to keep up with this. And there's all kinds of different AI.coms now, and some of them are tailored to this need. Others are tailored to a different need. So I've got to get up on all this so that I can compete in the marketplace.
Lance, I want to tell people that, especially if you're going through problems with the IRS, you don't have to be embarrassed. It happens to millions of people. And Lance, his firm, they understand what you're going through. It's not something to be embarrassed about. By doing nothing is going to hurt you more. Isn't that correct?
That's true. You can't put your head in the sand when the taxing authorities are coming after you, because what's going to happen is you're going to get wiped out. I don't think I've told you about what just happened in Tennessee. We had a gentleman who's been fighting them for years. He owed $1.2 million to the IRS, thought he could do it on his own, called us up after he had his fourth revenue officer, didn't hire us. And I'm sure that he didn't submit all the information the revenue officer submitted. They seized all of his assets, including his retirement account, which was $300,000 plus. When he called back, he said, Well, my wife was supposed to bring the check down. I was out of town. Well, guess what? I had to tell him that it's going to be a lot more uphill now that they've seized those assets from you. So, delay is never a good tactic to take with the IRS. You can't do this on your own. Don't be embarrassed. There are 26 million delinquent taxpayers in the United States.
Wow.
And by the year 2032, there will be 35 million delinquent taxpayers in the United States. So
incredible.
But
this is all your firm does. This is exactly what your firm does. And I got to tell you, what I'm thinking about this person you just told us about. I bet you he probably gave out a lot of information he shouldn't have given out.
Yeah, that's the other problem is people. It's just like talking to the cops. Your natural inclination is to talk, and too many people volunteer information that they don't need to disclose, and that just gets them into bigger trouble.
Well, I got to tell you, this show is becoming probably top 3 shows now of our 35 shows we do. And I base it on amount of emails that are coming in. People love your show. So I want to get started. We've got so many questions to throw at you today. Ron in Knoxville wants to know, what do I do if I can't pay my taxes?
Well, there's not a problem there. You just need to come to us. It's all based on your ability to pay the taxes back. So if you can't afford to pay them back, that's good for you. But you got to prove to the IRS that you don't have the ability to pay it back. So it's a lot of work for us. It's a lot of work for the taxpayer. You've got to be willing to put in the work. And we prove that. We have to go through financial statements. That's where you get the biggest bang for your buck in hiring my firm, because nobody fills them out right. They're confusing. They're complicated to the average individual. So nobody fills them out right the first time. We may have to go through them 3, 4, 5 times because you're submitting those under penalties of perjury. And secondly, guess what? You give us bad numbers, we're going to give you bad advice. And then for certain categories of expenses, we're going to need documentation through bank statements, credit card statements, debit card statements, because we have to prove up certain categories of expenses. So again, if you're going to hire us, just remember, you got to do the work. You just don't pay us the big bucks and we wave a magic wand and it goes away. I wish it would. I wouldn't have to work every Saturday and Sunday morning. I drove to my St. Louis office Saturday to see a couple people. And yesterday I had 2 phone calls in my St. Genevieve, Missouri office. But there's a real need for these services and you've got to be there. And so we accommodate people, because I recognize that a lot of people have to work during the week. And so they can't always talk to you during the week. So we schedule people on Saturday and Sunday mornings. That's not a problem.
Hey, speaking of work, because you also handle taxes for companies, especially companies that get in trouble with the IRS, try calling the IRS. Here you are, a business owner, and having to sit on the phone for hours when all you had to do is hire a company like Lance Jury's law firm and let them handle that. Who wants to sit on the phone for hours waiting on the IRS?
And in the old days, we had to do that, but now we have special software we can get through in 3 minutes, and it's worth every penny. It costs us a pretty penny, but it's worth it, because in the old days, we'd have to sit there. We'd have to do other work while we were waiting. But, we had the same frustrations as taxpayers. We'd call up, take 2 hours to get through, and then they disconnect us, So that still happens to people. I have people hire me simply because they're tired of waiting on the phone for the IRS. They can never get through to them.
Here's Gene in Cleveland. Is there a Cleveland, Tennessee?
That I don't know.
Yeah, Cleveland, Tennessee. What if I think that my IRS bill is wrong? What do I do?
Well, you need to call us up and we'll get that rectified. We'll find out. But here's the mistake that people make when they look at their bill. You got to remember, it's not just the raw tax. There's penalties and interest. And Steve, if you and I charge what the IRS charge for penalties and interest, we'd be in the federal clink. I mean, their penalties and interest are ridiculous. But guess what? They have the power to do it. So, they add up quickly. And the older the tax liability is, the more the penalties and interest are going to be. So, the bill could be wrong. The IRS is making more mistakes now than they ever have. I've never seen the IRS this bad. It's very frustrating. We're having to spend more time correcting their mistakes. So the bill could be wrong, or it could be just the accumulation of penalties and interest.
Lance, what's going to happen? We heard about these 80,000 new agents being hired, and then we hear about 26,000 agents are going to be let go. What's going on over at the IRS?
Well, I think it's the change with the new administration. Things were slow at the beginning of the year, and I think people had this misguided notion that Donald Trump was going to abolish the IRS.
Yes.
He's not going to abolish the IRS. In fact,
He can't.
month, no, and in fact, this month we may have a record month. Things are just booming, which is unusual in the summer, but there are all kinds of levy notices out there, and that's when people call me. So you're going to see a big curtailment from Joe Biden's 87 billion and 80,000 new employees, but the IRS isn't going away. But here's the problem with this, is that people don't want the IRS to have that many people. Well, that's fine. But if you've got a problem, guess what? The service is terrible now. It's taking 2 years sometimes for amended returns to process. It's taking all kinds of time for people to get this taken care of. And so, that's the downside of not funding the IRS properly, is that if you've got a problem, it's going to take forever to get it rectified.
Our next, and we've talked about this before, our next email just shows how much people love your show, Lance. Here's Shelley in Brentwood, Tennessee. She's writing, your show is too short. It's not long enough. It's amazing that you got a great show when people write that in. But her question is, and one we get all the time, what is an offer and compromise?
Well, before I answer that question, Shelley, I want you to know that when Steve told me this, he's told me before that people wish my show was longer. So I said, Steve, let's do this twice a month, not once a month. So now we're doing it twice a month.
I know.
But an offer and compromise, and I got to tell you, Shelley, unfortunately, most people in Tennessee don't qualify.
Oh.
But an offer and compromise is where you offer less than the full amount in full satisfaction of the debt. And of course, everybody loves it because once the conditions of the offer are completed, the liability goes away. But you've got to be 100% compliant for the next 5 years. Now, the reason why people in Tennessee, I'd say maybe 2% of my clients in Tennessee qualify. And Steve, you probably know this, but Nashville is now the place to be in the Midwest.
Yes.
People are coming in from California. They're paying $200,000 over the listed price for a home. So everybody in Tennessee's and Nashville's, my brother lives in Spring Hill, 45 minutes out, and it's the same problem there. But the homes are worth $750,000, $900,000. And when you do an offer, the IRS is going to consider your net equity and assets. So guess what? You owe $50,000, you owe $100,000, you owe $150,000. If you got a home that the net equity is over $500,000, you're not going to qualify for that offer because that takes you out of the offer. But the good news is, Shelley, is that there's more than one way to skin a cat. So you can do what's called a partial pay installment agreement. They may look at the equity in your home and they may tell you, okay, see if you can borrow against the home to pay the debt. 99% of the time, people can't get a loan to pay the debt, and we don't want them to anyway. And then they won't touch the home if it's your only home. And then it's based upon your income and your assets. And the partial pay installment agreement is like an offer in compromise in that you never pay back the full amount, but it's like an installment agreement in that you pay on it monthly. So the reason people don't like that all the time is it may take 5 years for the clock to run out on collections. So you have to pay for 5 years. So there's no instant gratification there like there is with an offer in compromise. But you got to play the game by the rules, and you got to use whatever tricks you can to get your client the best possible deal. And unfortunately, in Tennessee, it's tough to get an offer in compromise accepted.
Robert in Hendersonville, Tennessee. I am listening to your show for a friend of mine who is going to be calling you because he is now going through a collection due process hearing. What is that?
Okay, a collection due process hearing is it's a way to stop the levy. It's when they send you a final notice of intent to levy, they will send you the form for a collection due process hearing. That puts a pause on them not issuing the levy. They can't issue it while the collection due process hearing is pending. You can buy yourself at least 6 to 9 months. And yes, he needs professional assistance with that because you're going to go through financial statements. Nobody fills those out completely correct. So you do need professional guidance to do that. You don't want to talk to the IRS yourself. You're going to have a settlement officer for that. But here's the other problem. When I say 6 to 9 months, that could be longer. I just had one with a guy, $90,000 falls off in September. The IRS has less than 3 months to collect. It took 3 appeals officers. They kept switching it to a different appeals officer, but we didn't care because the clock was running. But we didn't file a collection due process hearing. Now, if the collection statute is close to expiring, let's say a year or less, maybe even longer, you don't want to file a collection due process hearing request. You want to file an equivalency hearing request, because when you file the collection due process hearing request, that stops the clock on collections. But if you file an equivalency hearing request, the clock doesn't stop during that whole time. So it just depends, and this is why people need professional guidance. I got to tell you, Steve, in the old days, when I was just a small town lawyer in my prior life, because I'm not a youngster anymore, as you can see, I spend 15 hours a year on continuing legal education. Now I and my 8 other lawyers in Missouri, Tennessee, Los Angeles, and Orlando, Florida, we spend a minimum of 50 to 100 hours a year or more just keeping up on this, because that's what you have to do. They're a bureaucracy. Things change all the time. Procedures changed all the time. And if you don't want to hire me, hire an attorney. Go local, hire an attorney. I got 6 people in my Nashville office. I was there last week. Don't hire an accountant. Accountants are great with the numbers, but they just dabble in this stuff. And all my attorneys have seen accountants give horrendous advice to people that have really cost them a lot of money. I just had a woman the other day said she talked to her accountant. Oh, well, we'll get you set up on $1,300 a month. She's on disability. She's not going to have to pay all this back. He was just telling her to go in and set up a full pay agreement. 85 to 90% of our clients never pay back the full amount, but you've got to prove to the IRS that you don't have the ability to pay all this back. So get professional help. Get somebody that does this every single day. If you need to, go to my website. You'll see the books I've co-authored, the speeches I've given across the country, the award I won in 2016. Look at the testimonials. In Tennessee, we're a 4.9 out of 5 in Google reviews. But if you don't hire my firm, get an attorney that does this every single day.
Ben in Columbia, Missouri, thank you so much for giving your time to do a show like this. I heard a phrase the other day called innocent spouse when it refers to taxes. What is that?
Innocent spouse is where you file the return jointly with your spouse, but you're basically saying, I didn't have anything to do this. Just because the tax was incurred by the other spouse is not enough. I'll give you an example. I had a woman in Festus, Missouri, and if you live in Columbia, you may know where Festus is. That's about 30 minutes south of St. Louis. And the husband had a business, but he took care of all the financial affairs. She wasn't aware of any of this. She filed for divorce for him. All of these allegations were pled in the divorce, and we got her off of $100,000 in tax liability by showing that she did not have knowledge of this, that the husband hid things from her. So she walked away with owing the IRS nothing. So it's a situation where you're basically kept in the dark over what's going on in terms of what the other spouse is doing and incurring that tax liability. There's like 8 pages of forms that you have to fill out, and we will do that in certain cases to see if they're going to be a good candidate for an innocent spouse defense.
Lance, your show goes by so fast. Tell people, first of all, how do they reach you?
Well, there's numbers at the bottom of the screen. You know, we have offices in St. Genevieve, Missouri, St. Louis, Missouri, Nashville, Tennessee, and San Antonio. And all the numbers are at the bottom of this screen. But you can also go to lancedrurylaw.com. There's a lot of good, useful information. There's a lot of good content there. So you can call the office or you can go to lancedrurylaw.com. You can check us out either way, but we're always here for you, and we'll accommodate your needs as best we can.
And Lance will be with us again next month, twice next month. Plus, we also replay his shows, which we're going to be doing this Friday at 2:00 Eastern time. Lance, I love doing the show with you. And listen, travel safe, because I know you're getting ready to do a lot of traveling. And we'll see you next month.
Steve, it's always a pleasure. I love doing the show with you.
We love you, Lance. Thanks so much. That's attorney Lance Drury. Give him a call. We're going to go to a short break. We'll be right back.
Thanks for tuning in today to the Ask the Expert show on W4CY Radio and Talk4 TV. Tune in next week and every week to hear more from our experts on personal injury, insurance, air condition repairs, estate planning, Medicare, and many other topics in the areas of legal, health, financial, and home improvement. See you next week.